For 40 years, software was built through a specific ritual. You sat down in front of a blank screen and started typing. Almost immediately, you hit a wall. You stared at an error message, fighting the machine line by line, trying to bridge the gap between human intent and computer logic. That struggle taught more than syntax. It was the mechanism for building a developer's internal mental model. The act of sitting alone with a broken system, reading stack traces and tracking memory leaks, forced you to visualize how data actually moved. Systems run on unforgiving precision. A single missing semicolon could crash a server. An unchecked integer overflow could erase financial records. To fix those issues, you had to internalize the logic of the machine itself, because the computer doesn't interpret what you meant to say. It only executes exactly what you told it. Getting it wrong repeatedly was the process of learning what right looks like. That cognitive friction was the true teacher. It was the engineering. Then, in the span of roughly 18 months, the process changed. AI agents like Copilot and Claude arrived. These tools can populate a blank file with complex, edge case-handled boilerplate in seconds, handling the heavy lifting before a developer finishes their first thought. This chart tracks the adoption of AI-generated code. Between 2021 and 2023, the volume of code grew rapidly. By 2023, 46% of production code shipped by these users was written by a model, reviewed, accepted, and deployed without a human typing a single character. This speed is transformative for output, but it creates a vacuum in code reviews. Senior engineers began seeing junior developers submit massive features instantly, but when asked to explain the specific logic behind their own submissions, they were met with silence. This signals a shift in the nature of the work. When a developer accepts an AI suggestion they cannot explain, they move from being an architect of logic to a curator of patterns. The feedback loop that once forced a programmer to understand the machine has been broken. The 2024 Stack Overflow Developer Survey highlighted exactly where this behavior is concentrated. The highest adoption of AI coding tools is among the industry's newest arrivals, developers with less than 2 years of experience. This creates an illusion of competence. It is like a generation learning to drive using GPS. You can navigate complex routes perfectly, but you never acquire the underlying spatial reasoning required to find your way if the signal drops out. Plotting problem-solving depth over 36 months, the AI-assisted developer shoots up rapidly, hitting a hard plateau at 12 months. The traditional developer starts slower, but their depth of understanding continually builds, eventually accelerating straight past the AI user. A frictionless workflow boasts a false sense of skill that evaporates when the autocomplete turns off. The hiring market is already reacting to this. Tech companies are finding candidates with flawless GitHub portfolios who completely freeze up when asked to solve basic algorithmic problems on a whiteboard without assistance. As a direct result, Google reinforced their technical interview standards. They are using more rigorous testing to filter out candidates whose surface-level output was artificially inflated by generative tools. Meta is enforcing the same guardrails. They are demanding proof of independent reasoning because automation makes it incredibly easy to simulate expertise you haven't yet earned. The real consequences show up at 2 a.m. A critical system goes offline. The on-call team pulls up the codebase and traces the error to a chunk of AI-generated logic written 6 months ago. The problem is, nobody on the team has the mental model required to debug it. When you build critical infrastructure using logic no human fully comprehends, a broken system ceases to be an engineering problem. It becomes an archaeological ruin. To survive this era, you have to map exactly where these tools excel. This Venn diagram shows what AI generates versus what critical systems require. AI is exceptional at the conventional, the heavily documented, and the pattern-based boilerplate. But look at the gap outside the overlap, the zone where systems fail. AI cannot design novel cross-system architectures. It cannot navigate undocumented security gaps or manage hardware constraints that were never part of its training data. Generating code is no longer the primary value of a developer. The true value is holding the foundational depth necessary to evaluate what the machine spits out and accurately predict exactly where the edge cases live. The engineers who will dictate the next decade of software are the ones who deeply understand the territory the AI cannot map. The ritual of traditional coding, the slow, deliberate struggle with a problem, remains as necessary as ever. AI simply provides a way to opt out of it. Relying entirely on the shortcut builds systems you cannot own. It produces experience that vanishes the moment the tool is removed. Becoming a great engineer still requires the same deliberate, frustrating accumulation of knowledge it always has. The danger today is how easy it has become to build a career on top of a foundation that isn't actually there.